Thank you for wandering into the last video store once again. My name is Alexei and I am your dearest friend when it comes to loving movies. And on this show, we talk to interesting people about their favorite movies. And this is actually part 2 of my chat with Kate Jinx from the See Also podcast about the best films of 2024, or our favorite films of 2024. We're continuing to wrap up the year, and we're doing the categories this week. We're going to be looking at our favorite documentary and factual films of 2024, our favorite or most interesting directorial debuts, looking at Australian cinema in 2024 as well, and those kind of honourable mentions, those movies that didn't quite have that little spot fit into our top 5s of the year, but we wanted to put on your radar as well and celebrate here on the last video store. We're going to get into it in a second, but I'll give a lovely little introduction to my friend Kate Jinx. Kate Jinx is a programmer for the Melbourne International Film Festival, so she sees more movies than basically anybody else on earth, and that is just one little feather in her cap. She hosts one of my favorite podcasts, See Also. We'll talk a little bit about that show at the end of this, but if you love pop culture and culture chat, See Also is your one-stop shop for everything. It's a great podcast. And also, Kate is a great film critic. She's writing some great profiles on films for the monthly at the moment that are well worth your time reading. But anyway, let's get into it. Thank you for joining me once again for this bonus episode. And hopefully you get some films added to your watch lists. And that is Adam Sandler behind me on that side. And on this side, it's Dr. Evil.
The last video store.
Kate, do you have a little bit more time to stick around? We can go through some categories together.
I sure do.
Well, let's talk about some of our favourite Australian films for the year as well, or films that you thought had some kind of impact, something interesting. I mean, I had 2 Aussie films in my top 5, with Better Man and Furiosa.
You did. They are big Australian films. Do you have, because I remember like last year you were all over the Australian cinema scene, and they were they were independent features. Like you loved Bird Eater.
Loved Bird Eater.
So what are your, and like Late Night with the Devil, love that film.
Yeah, I'm putting Late Night in the Devil. I didn't see it last year, I saw it this year. So that I really loved Late Night with the Devil. I think it's an interesting kind of spot for Australian film this year, because another film that I really loved was Memoir of a Snail by Adam Elliott, which was the opening film at the Melbourne International Film Festival. I love Adam Elliott's cinema. I think that he's one of the most creative animators that has ever been able to make features. And I think Marion Max is an absolute masterpiece. And Memoir of a Snail is accessing this kind of melancholy that I really like sitting in, which is funny, it's sweet, but it's really sad and really heartbreaking. I thought it was just beautiful. And then on the other side...
hang on. On that one, though, I got to tell you, the first time I saw it was in a room with Adam Elliott.
Wow. What, just the 2 of you together?
There were 5 of us. So it was 3 of us from MIF and Adam and his fabulous producer. And... It was nerve-wracking. It was like he'd only just finished this film. It had taken so many years to finish it, of course, because the details of it are so extreme. And that's nerve-wracking to watch this film with him and his dog. And luckily, we loved it. I thought it was a fantastic film and so true to Adam's vision and his ability to capture this quite dark energy that is so funny and so bittersweet. What a great, he's a great filmmaker, and his work is just beautiful. And the voice work by Sarah Snook, fantastic, and Cody Smith-McPhee in particular,
and Jackie Weaver.
What a beautiful film. And I was so glad to see it do so well overseas at international festivals, and do well here as well when it was released into theaters. Great
very
film.
Special film. Any Australian favorites for you apart from Memoir of a Snail?
Yeah, well, Late Night with the Devil I would count as last year, but I love that film. I guess it only came into cinemas this year, and it's such an interesting film because it's just like I love the aesthetic of it, and the great performances, great cameo by Johnny Leary in there.
Wow.
Love that.
Of course, you can hear Kate and I on Johnny Leary's podcast, The Saturday Quiz. Great podcast.
But my favourite Australian film this year is Flathead by Jaden Martin. I just thought it really blew me away when I saw it. It's a extraordinary black and white film that's kind of a documentary hybrid, all shot in and set in Bundaberg in Queensland, and which is where my See Also co-host Brodie Lancaster hails from. And it's, this story of this older man who kind of moves back into town and he's seeking some kind of spiritual guidance. He's had a very rough life, and his relationship with we get to see all these different people in the town. I just thought it was a really extraordinary film, and I really marks Jaden as a filmmaker to watch. It premiered at Rotterdam. It had its world premiere there, and then it played in Sydney and in Melbourne at the festivals. And it was just playing at Acme here in Melbourne. But yeah, if you can see that film, it's some really thoughtful filmmaking.
Yeah, I co-sign everything you just said. I think some of the most arresting Australian imagery I've seen in quite some time. And very few Australian films are shot in black and white. Like very, very few. There was Limbo last year from Ivan Sen.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Flathead this year. I feel like it's a very rare thing to see what Australia looks like in monochrome. Beautiful film. Great portrait about place and man. I loved it. I had only just caught up with it. Another Australian film I really liked that I was lucky enough to see at South by Southwest here in Sydney as a member of the jury. And this was a film that we awarded the top prize to, which is called A Grand Mockery by Adam C. Briggs and Sam Dixon. Very small, less than micro budget, shot on film. And it is an exploration of, I guess, like psychological anguish and torment in a really interesting way. It's about a man who, as they say, I will just read out this lovely synopsis that they have. Josie leads a life of passive, mundane displeasure before his psychic ills deform him and sees him roaming the rainforest hinterlands of Queensland. So it's also a Queensland film shot in Brisbane. And I just found it, we very rarely see experimental films in Australia. And this feels like such like a genuine experiment in cinema and a genuine experiment in empathy for both the filmmakers, the cast, and now the audience experiencing it. Very, very bold. It's a grand mockery. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it yet, Kate.
I actually haven't. Not that one. No, sadly.
I don't know. I think it will trying to get a release, but it's such a small film. It's hard to say. And experimental. It's hard to say where it will land out there in the world, but just keep it in your realm to you, Kate, and to the listeners and viewers of the show. Yeah, very, very bold Australian film. A Grand Mockery. I loved it. Now, let's use Flathead to link to our next category of factual and documentary films. Do you have any favorites in that kind of realm of factual filmmaking?
Yeah, I mean, definitely No Other Land. Incredible film. What a feat of filmmaking. Was so pleased when it won Best Documentary at Berlin, even though there was a lot of kerfuffle around it at Berlin, of course, and then it has gone on to play so many festivals, been so acclaimed, and also get a big cinema release here, which is fantastic.
It's playing right now, but can you tell me what No Other Land is about?
It's made by a Palestinian-Israeli film collective. There are 4 directors, but essentially it's about this Palestinian activist and his relationship, kind of friendship with an Israeli journalist. And the Palestinian activist is displaced, and it's about the differences between their kind of the way that they can interact in the space and the world. It's a really extraordinary film. I think, Alexei, you would get a lot out of it. I think you would find it really, I hate to use the word, but it's very powerful.
I love to feel power. I love to feel moved and thought-provoked, if you will. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing it, especially now that it's like playing in cinemas. I'm going to probably see it, dare I say, when we hang up this chat.
Oh, go out and see it. And my other favorite would be Muddy Diop's Dahomey. I thought that
I
was
missed this.
Oh, it's so good. And do you know what? Everyone has time for this film because it runs for like an hour.
Yeah.
And who doesn't love a film that runs for an hour?
Oh,
It,
yeah.
yeah, it's a great. She's such a great filmmaker, and it's about the restitution or return of these 26, I think, treasures from Benin, which were being held in a museum in France. And so they were. It's the Republic of Benin now, but it was known as the Kingdom of Dahomey in the past. And we see these treasures being packed up by people working in the museum, ready to go back to Africa. And they're being handled so carefully and packed up and then, like flown over. And then we see them kind of come out of their boxes and installed into another museum. And then we see people kind of interacting, coming to the opening night and seeing them in person. But then there's also this excellent round table that is intercut within it, which was set up by the director, Mady Diop. And it's these kind of younger people, locals, who are talking about the restitution of these objects and how it's not enough. It's like only 26, there were thousands. And what does it mean for these to have been away for so long and then to come back and still be placed within an institution? It's such a fascinating political discussion, and you hear lots of different sides about, like artifacts and what they mean and history and stolen culture. Which is such a kind of timely thing. It's been timely for a long time, but it's a really great thing to be talking about at the moment. But the best thing about it has this narration that runs throughout it from the voice of like one of the treasures, like one of the statues. So you hear this like statue speaking. It's a great film.
I loved Mady Diop's previous film Atlantics a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought it was just fantastic. And now to see that she's a filmmaker that is making both, like Atlantics is kind of a fantasy film, and now working in factual filmmaking, making both narrative features and factual films. To me, that excites me because that's my favorite kind of filmmaker. Filmmakers that like Scorsese or Agnes Varda or Spike Lee or Penelope Spheris that do both. That's what I want to see. That's what excites me.
Yeah.
My favorite factual documentary film this year, this would have been in my top 5. So I'm using this as a way to put another one of my top 5s out there and give me an extra room up in that film. This is a film called Balomania by Cecil Dargis Morel. Had you heard of this film?
No. What is this about?
This played at the Sydney Film Festival, and I only went to go see it because at the program launch night they played a trailer for this, and I just was like, I have to go see this film. And I felt like in the room that sold tickets because this trailer was so exciting. It is that kind of category of factual filmmaking that I love the most, which is illuminating a subculture you couldn't even fathom existing. It's a thrill like no other to be introduced to the real life high stakes world of balaleiros, who are these men in the favelas in Brazil who covertly design, construct, and then launch these spectacular, beyond, no matter how big you think these are, they are bigger than that, hot air balloons into the sky. And they are all these like artistic portraits, like the one is like a giant Sylvester Stallone portrait, like airbrush. There's a giant Pavarotti. Like they're all these like incredibly artistically designed creations. And it's like this highly illegal thing. And it was like this crackdown that they could do because it would be easier to crack down on these men than it is to crack down on the drug dealing and gangs in the favelas. So it became like this, it's like this great covertly made documentary in this world. I don't know when I'll ever get to see this again. It only had 2 screenings at SFF. I don't know if it got screened anywhere else. But hopefully a distributor picks this up because I think that this is just like such a sneaky winning documentary. That's Balomania. I think it might be it would be up in my very favorites of the year.
Cool. I've got to see it.
Another one I just caught up with, it is on Mubi, so anyone can watch this. It's by filmmaker Elizabeth Sankey, who is an essay filmmaker. It's their new film, Witches. And I know you haven't seen this because it's too far up and down the line, a Kate Jinx type of film. But it's a deeply personal documentary film essay examining cinematic portrayals of witches, which is an area of keen interest for you, and juxtaposing that with postpartum psychological stress and depression. Just really worked for me. That thesis comparing these things together just really, really worked. I love this kind of cinematic essay. I give it a big recommendation for people out there.
Yeah, I've got to see it. It looks wonderful. Like everything I've seen about the film, I got to see it. I gotta.
You got to see it. You got to see it. And then I saw this other documentary at Sydney Film Festival called Porcelain War about the war in Ukraine and artists that are now being forced into battle. And I thought it was very, very moving, very, very effective, and small Australian co-production as well. Quite a special little film. Something that you and I celebrate a lot, and already we've seen a few of them in our top favourites and in our factual and Australian films, but directorial debuts, Kate. Any filmmakers you wish to call out as being a future master of cinema?
Oh God! Wow. Okay. I love how much you use master of cinema.
I love it.
Should be the name of your memoir.
DVD Memories will be my memoir, I believe.
Well, yeah. I mean, my number one film is a debut feature, but
Yeah.
the others are Hoard by Luna Carmoon. I don't know if you got to see this one.
I did see this in IMAX, actually.
Oh yeah! Wow. Okay. Wow. That would have been an experience. You saw it at MIF in IMAX. Amazing. I just thought this was fantastic. It came out, I saw it at Venice last year, and I just thought, wow, who is this bold new vision?
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what Luna is working on next. I mean, she's released a couple of video clips. She's directed 2 video clips for Fontaine's DC, and they really play with what she was doing with Hoard. I think it's like a perfect match between a band and an artist. But God, this was so good.
What a wacky film. And as well, like, just I saw her do an introduction and Q&A for the film, and it's go, this is one of the most interesting people I've ever seen. And I love this film.
Yeah, I spent a bit of time with her when she was here, and she's just such a talent. Yeah, love this film. Great performances by Sarah Lightfoot Leon, who has never. That was her first role. She plays the main character. She's a dancer, and Joseph Quinn. And I really love it because he plays this like. There's so much kind of yucky stuff in this film. It's very visceral and really plays with all of that. And I really love that so many like younger Stranger Things fans went to see this film for Joseph Quinn, and then they're like, "Oh my God, he's doing some disgusting things." And I love that. I love the idea of young Stranger Things fans being radicalized by Luna Carmoon.
Yeah, I loved this film. Great pick. I also, another one you put on my radar, Good One by India Donaldson.
That would be my other one. Yeah, for sure. What a good film.
Great film. I think it's having a small limited release at the Golden Age here in Sydney. Beautiful film. You have to see this because it's, I think, very, very funny, very, very moving. Just a very small story about a teenage girl, her dad, and her dad's best friend going on a camping hike trip together. And just so clever, the way things are revealed, the way things unfold. Small, intimate, funny, hard to watch as well. Just excellent film.
Yeah. I've seen it a couple of times, and with an audience, it's extraordinary because something happens in the film and there is like a collective gasp in the cinema, and I love that. The only other one I would shout out would be Julie Keeps Quiet by Leo Van Deel, Belgian filmmaker. That was also, all 3 of those films were in our Bright Horizons competition at MIF, and great. I can't wait to see what he does next.
I didn't get a chance to see that one, but I would say the first Omen by Akasha Stevenson, I thought that was just so much fun, and a shock to find out it was a film debut, because after seeing it, I go, I need to see everything this person's ever made, and they had made nothing else. So I can't wait to see what they do next. There's Still Tomorrow by Paola Cottalesi, Italian filmmaker who is their directorial debut, but they've written a lot and starred in a lot of films in Italy. Lots of kind of like light comedies and rom-coms. This is a really interesting post-war film that looks and has a premise of a kind of more typical like Italian neorealism, like post-war Italian neorealism, but then it has these moments of like surrealistic flourishes that are kind of a great way to examine this kind of familiar territory of domestic violence in Italy, in post-war Italy, but it's done so almost through dance and musical. And I just thought this was very exciting. Loved it. And it was playing at the State Theatre here in Sydney, and a lot of tears in this screening. I thought it was just a wonderful, wonderful film. Did you get a chance to see that one, Kate?
No, sadly. I've heard only good things about it, though.
And then the other two I'll shout out. I loved Kneecap. I thought that was so much fun.
Yeah.
Tremendous film. Lots of great time in the cinema. And then from one of my favorite actors, Dev Patel, Monkey Man. Great action film. And to make John Wick, but with like a purpose and a political motive, I thought was great.
Does it actually star a monkey? I haven't seen it.
He wears a monkey mask. So
it's not CGI monkey.
It's not a CGI monkey.
Oh,
it is a practical effects monkey. But
I
not
can
even
deal.
a monkey. You'll like it.
All right, I can
You'll
deal
like
with that.
I think you'll more than deal with it. I think you'll enjoy it.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I love Dev Patel. Do you have any honourable mentions or like things that might feel a little old but actually came out this year?
Yeah, there's a few kind of 2003, 2024 films
Yeah.
that I would give those honourable mentions for. Taste of Things, I loved. I didn't see it till this year. La Chimera, I loved. I didn't see it till this year either. Hundreds of Beavers, I saw last year. So if you're going, where's Hundreds of Beavers? I saw it last year. It was on my list last year. Top 3 or 4 last year, mate.
Same with La Chimera. La Chimera is probably my favourite film of the last 5 years. I think it is an absolutely extraordinary film. I love Alice Rohrwacher's movies, but this is just so extraordinary, magnificent filmmaking.
Yeah.
And I would love to wax lyrical about that again, but I did that a lot last year.
I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. But, I don't want to put too many old movies on this list,
No. I know, because if we're looking at it, it's like Zone of Interest came out this year. Anatomy of a Fall technically came out this year. But like...
May, December, I'm going to put that on this. No, it was my number one last year. What am I going to do?
You can't. Exactly. Do you have any others in there?
Yeah, these are a couple of films that didn't make even my longer list, but I think they're worth noting when we're talking about film this year. Horror had quite an interesting moment in cinema, and 2 films I think are worthy of putting in when we're talking about the films of 2024 are The Substance and I Saw the TV Glow. I liked both of these movies a lot. I probably liked them just to that edge of before I fell in love with them, just kind of off that area. Especially I Saw the TV Glow.
Yeah.
A horror film like none I'd ever seen before. Jane Schoenbrunn, whose previous film... We're All Going to the World's Fair, I thought was an excellent, unique film and horrifying in a unique way without it really being a horror film. And I was very impressed by that as a debut. The leap from that film to I Saw the TV Glow is unfathomable.
That A24 leap, baby.
Unfathomable. I cannot believe that leap. It's like, it's cosmic how far it leaps.
Yeah.
I think it's extremely impressive. It's been exciting seeing how deeply people have been touched by it, how many eggs have cracked, if you will, from this film. I think it's a very special film, very, very special film, and it's that recreation of those Buffy, or the one that I liked watching, So Weird, which is a Disney Channel version of Buffy, about a young paranormal investigator, and while her mum, who's a country musician, tours the country in a big bus. The recreation of that kind of show down to the typeface in them, in the TV show, the pink opaque that the characters in Ice and the TV Glow watch, I thought was just very, very special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to be gross about it, but I have written about those films at length.
Good.
And I had a really good time doing so, because particularly with I Saw the TV Glow, because it really... I've seen it 3 times now in order to really write about it and really pinpoint what the film is doing and how it's kind of a messy film. It's like It doesn't. It's certainly not a neat film, but I think it's all the more. It's a better film for it.
Agree.
Anyway, yeah, I thought they were both on my honourable mentions too.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what Jane Schoenbrunn does next.
Yeah, me too. And I think that's like if you also lump in the first Omen and Smile too, I think it's interesting seeing horror kind of grappling with female bodily autonomy right now. And I think it's, it's all very clearly in conversation with what's been going on in America over the last few years. I think it's always interesting to see the way horror grapples with what's going on in the zeitgeist and what's going on culturally. And I think it's having a deserved special moment in the spotlight for people to engage with and audiences to engage with.
Yeah, totally. I always think when I see these films like Substance in particular and Love Lies Bleeding even, like what would Barbara Creed think? Like the esteemed Australian academic and writer and filmmaker who coined the term monstrous feminine, has written a couple of books about it. Can't wait to see what she has to say about those films in her writing coming up. I had a few. I had a few others. One that would be in my top 5, but I'm really hoping it gets distribution because it deserves a big theatrical release is Universal Language by Matthew Rankin.
That's in my big list as well, I'd say.
God, what a great filmmaker. It's only his second feature, and it's all set in Winnipeg, Canada, where he's from, but it's as if it's kind of his reimagined city that is like in the 80s, and the local language is Farsi, and everything is either in Farsi or French. And it is so funny and bizarre and tender, and it is kind of an homage to a lot of Iranian classical cinema. Really beautiful film. I just hope that gets out because it deserves to be seen.
Yeah, it feels like a Wes Anderson film. It feels like a Kaurismäki film. It feels like, what's the Iranian filmmaker? Taste of Cherry?
Abbas Kiarostami.
Yeah, Kiarostami film. Yeah. It's very unique and very, very funny. I loved it. Loved this film.
Yeah, beautiful film. I loved My Favorite Cake. I also wrote a lot about that one. Did you get a chance to see this?
I didn't see it, no.
Oh, you must. Oh, you are going to love this, actually. This is so up your alley. Iranian film about this older woman who is a widow, and her children live far away from her. They live abroad. She lives on the outskirts of Tehran. She kind of won't move into the city because she still has this beautiful kind of foothold where she lives. She has a garden out the back, which is very rare. And it's about her trying to working, like, moving through the world, being kind of silent. She's able to protect this younger woman from being kind of hauled off by the morality police because she's wearing this like incorrectly worn hijab. And she's also decided that she wants love in her life. And it is just one of the most joyful things on screen I have seen all year. And it is also not it doesn't kind of give way to kind of unrealistic and unrealistic endings of that, if you will, without giving anything away. Alexei, you got to see this today. You will love it.
Far out. I mean, the other film that I was going to say as well, another Iranian film, Seed of the Sacred Fig, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
And when I talk about like the communicative power of cinema, I think that is a film that does it so well because it uses genre in such a way that I did not anticipate, that I found riveting, where the last act of this film essentially becomes a thriller in the most truest, dirtiest genre exploitive sense. But then the first part is taking an allegory of what is going on in Iran and then making it seen through the lens of the micro level of a family unit. Spectacular filmmaking from Mohammad Rasulov as well.
That's a great film. The only other one I would throw in there is actually something that I only watched last night.
Oh, I love a last minute edition. Something sneaking right through there.
Wild card just for you.
Love it.
It's Azazel Jacobs, his three daughters.
I love this movie. Love this movie.
Wow, what a great film. I love his film Mama's Man. It is one of my all-time favorite. Oh God, you are going to love it. That blew me away. It was like I think it was his first feature. And I remember seeing it at the Sydney Film Festival so long ago, like just going on a whim because I had a free night and like a ticket on my pass left, and just blew me away. What a great film. But his three daughters, because it came out on Netflix, it's one of those films I'm just like, if it doesn't get a cinema release, I just put it off because I'm like, well, as excited as I am for that cast, like Elizabeth Olsen, Carrie Coon, Natasha Lyonne, and Azazel Jacobs, I'm like, I could catch that anytime. I only saw The Power of the Dog for the first time this year. You know, like, but then last night it was my first night alone. My partner's away at the moment. And I came back to Melbourne. I flew in from Sydney, picked up my dog, and I was making dinner and I put on Panic Room.
Oh, it's just gorgeous movie. We love Panic Room.
What movie could I watch by my? And so, but then halfway through, I was like, I've seen this too many. Did I know the twists? and like it's hard to watch old again, you know. So I thought, fine, I'll bite the bullet. I'm going to watch His Three Daughters, and I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
The dialogue's fantastic. It really captures this kind of, you know, family rivalry and like the twists and turns within a family and like who means what in the hierarchy, and captures so much about grief, but like pre-grief when you're grieving for your sick parent, like you know, grieving what is going to come, and you're already kind of grieving what you're losing. Like in present day, it's such a bizarre feeling to go through. It's really a really difficult time, and so and I thought I don't see that captured very much on screen, and Azazel Jacobs just did a beautiful job. Great.
I couldn't agree more. And everything, like this film wasn't on my radar. I only watched it because freaking Paul Kelly picked it as his film on this podcast.
Oh, wow.
That's how I found out about it. Was Paul Kelly knew about this movie, blew me away. I watched it literally while my mum was in hospital, and it couldn't have hit me harder. Found it so moving. That Natasha Lyonne performance is probably
one for the ages, right?
Marianne Jean-Baptiste, my favorite performance of the year. Just love this movie, His Three Daughters.
There's so much going on behind her overly large eyes all throughout this film, right?
Yeah,
wow.
Absolutely. Great pick.
Yeah.
Well, to end this podcast and chat on Kate, I would love to ask you your favorite, like a little bonus question, your favorite repertory or older retro screening, a film that you caught this year in the cinema, maybe one that you presented, an older film. What was your highlight of like an older film in the cinema?
Okay, well, you put like 3 films basically as number 5 in your top 5. So I am using my get out of jail free card on this, and I've got 2.
Yeah.
One that I reckon I'd wish you actually said to the other programmer I saw with, her name's Kate. I actually said to her at the time, like, I wish Alexei was here for this. Wow. It was at the Berlinale this year, and it was a new restoration of After Hours by Scorsese. Of course, it's a film I've seen before, but I've never seen it in a cinema.
Yeah.
But the kicker was Thelma Schoonmaker was there to introduce, and she was amazing. She was giving like all this information about like, you know, what had happened, like how it changed right at the ending changed right at the end of the film, and it wasn't Scorsese doing it, and blah blah blah, like giving so much little tidbits, and she just was such a cool presence on stage. So that was just like a little gift to myself to go along and see that film. But the film that I saw that was not on my radar before this year, and I was lucky to be able to present this at MIF, I did a collaboration with MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, and because they put together this absolutely incredible, huge program of pre-revolutionary Iranian cinema, and they managed to span 5 decades of cinema in this very extended program. And so what we presented was just kind of the new wave films, and we did 12 sessions, but there were 26 films within those 12 sessions. And of course, with this era of Iranian cinema, like hardly any of them have been restored properly. And so what you're getting are these like digital scans of the director's own file and, like working with this all the fantastic curators at MoMA and also their guest curator, Ezen Koshbakt. It was just really an extraordinary like an absolute career highlight for me to be able to kind of work with them and see these films, such rare films. But the one that blew me away the most that I'd never seen was called Dead End. It's from 1977. It's by Parviz Sayad. And it is one of the kind of rare films that focuses on a young woman. And she's dressed in these amazing paisley outfits. Like the whole thing is very beautiful. Oh, it's so good. These like deep mid 70s colors, just so like milky and gorgeous. But she sees this man standing under her window all the time, and she becomes completely convinced that he's in love with her. Wow. And she starts she goes to this like local coffee house and strikes up these conversations with him. But of course, it's like it's pre-revolution, and what is the reality of the situation is far more sinister than that. But the majority of the film is these conversations she has with her best friend about this man who's in love with her and like what her life will be like. And the best friend seems to be a little in love with her as well. So you're getting like just all these incredible angles from these relationships, and her relationship with her mother. She's played by Mary Apik, and her own mother, Apik Yousefian, plays her mother in the film. She won Best Actress when it came out because it was banned in Iran. Wow. But it went to the Moscow International Film Festival, like the 10th Moscow International Film Festival. And so what we had of it was a digital scan. Sorry, this is am I getting to like nerd territory?
I'm getting so excited.
Okay, so what we had was a digital scan of the original 35mm print, which came from UCLA, the UCLA archive, amazing archive in California. But the digital scan was at a slightly different frame rate from the original. Like it was just how it had to be done. And so every so often, like the film kind of jumps, like is sort of jumpy a little bit throughout the film, but that's like the very best you can ever get. And that had like some changes in color and grading throughout it ever so slightly. But the subtitles were amazing. These are the best subtitles. Like I love the work of Teddy Blanks and Chip, of course he does. Like the titles for The Curse were the titles of the year, I will say, by Teddy Blanks. But in Repertory, these are just the most beautiful titles. They're etched into the print.
Wow.
So we couldn't do anything about them. And they were all in eggshell blue.
Wow.
Which is so unusual. Like they're white or yellow. Generally they're yellow from an older film, but or European, but these were all in eggshell blue, and I was so worried about it until we tested it. Like, is anyone going to be able to read any of this? And they could, and I was like, everyone needs to be doing eggshell blue titling, and like the Farsi like titles at the beginning in this particular color. It was just. It's a like really, prescient film in terms of themes and what's happening with Iran at the moment. But it was just it was such a rare thing to be able to present this to an audience in Melbourne. Like it's just absolutely impossible to see this film. So that was, that was a total highlight for me.
Unreal. Wow. I wish I had seen it. I'll never get another chance. That was my one chance.
It's your one chance.
I'll never see an eggshell blue subtitle now. I have to put, maybe I'll transcribe this and put those on there.
Beautiful.
I only have two that I want to shout out as well. I saw Crystal Voyager, the surf film at the Opera House this year by David Elphick.
How cool.
Prolific Australian producer. His directorial debut, I believe.
David Elphick, he did our fave, Starstruck.
He did our fave, Starstruck, one of my favourite Australian producers. But this was just... amazing seeing this on a big screen. One of those times where you just feel engulfed by a film, and it's very funny. It's got this like kind of very funny narration following this. It's a documentary, I guess, following a surfer what's his name? The surfer's name? Oh, George Greenough, an American surfer, spends a lot of time in Australia. But he was the guy that invented the cameras that could go inside the waves. Like, when you see the curl coming over, the rip curl, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
He was the guy that invented those cameras. So it's following him. Almost funny Wes Anderson-like narration, like it's over the top, like very silly. It's like knowing in the humor, but maybe an audience wouldn't be ready for it, which makes me think that surf films are quite experimental. So there's all these audiences like that are not film going or cinema going audiences, but in the 70s, because they would be going seeing surf films, they had all these great experiments in cinema. And the way that this film closes, this long, extended, psychedelic sequence entirely scored by echoes by Pink Floyd. And it was one of the best times I've had in a cinema. I took my dad to go see it because he was a surf rat back in the day and he loves this movie. I think he showed it to me on VHS like 20, 30 years ago now. Not 30 years ago. I'm too young for that to have been the case. I would have been a zygote. I mean, I probably could have seen it through his eye back then as well. After all, I was the apple hanging out in his eye back in those days. But yeah, I just thought this was so surprising, so beautiful. Crystal Voyager, 4K restoration, hopefully coming to either a cinema or a Blu-ray near you one day. Fantastic. And the other one, we're talking Elphick, we're talking our fave. I presented The Last Days of Chez Nu at the Opera House with Gillian Armstrong in attendance. We did a Q&A after. Just very special screening, showing one of my favorite Sydney films in Sydney to a Sydney audience. You can't beat that shit, you can't beat it. And that's a film that I don't think many people have seen. The Last Days of Chez Nu, great kind of melodrama with naturalistic elements as well. Probably the closest we get to like a Pedro Almodovar film in Australia ever. I just love that movie.
Yeah, it's one of her best. I love that film. I grew up watching that film.
Yeah. And
really
just
extraordinary.
Sydney looks so beautiful in it. Just great movie. Well, that's all that we have to talk about, Kate. You've got a great podcast, See Also, and you do a great thing like you and I. We share recommending things to people. But on See Also, it's more than just movies you recommend. You recommend freaking like candles. You recommend everything. It's just like a great podcast. One of my favorites, you and Brody Lancaster. I listen to it every week.
Thanks, Alexei.
My best. Anything you want to say about it to bring the listeners and viewers over to See Also?
No, I mean, we talk a lot about pop culture and we do these little poodle episodes where we go deep on one particular film. Alexei, you and I have one coming up together in, I think, late Jan, early Feb. But it's always a really fun chat. We actually had this great episode. I don't know if you heard it recently.
I know that you were going to say I loved this episode.
Yeah, food critic Besha Rodell, one of the last fully anonymous film restaurant critics. So her face is not out there in the world. And that was I just learned so much from listening to her and talking about her career, but also giving us all of her tips for where to eat around Australia was really great. That's probably my favorite of the last couple of weeks. But
I love that episode, but it's such a great podcast. It's called See Also. Definitely listen to it. If you like this show, you will love See Also. Kate, thank you so much for joining me. I love talking to you about movies. Dare I say it? I love you. This was so much fun.
Too. I think we've got another decade in us.
I think so.
Yeah.
And you'll have to come in and do an actual podcast of The Last Video Store, talk about some of your favorite movies, and I'll try and give you a recommendation.
I would be delighted. Just no monkeys, thanks.
Oh, shit. Well, we're all out of luck. I've unfortunately converted all the films here at The Last Video Store to be the monkey cuts. They're all starring chimpanzees. Thanks so much, Kate. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Alexei.
The Last Video Store.